I thought it was a great North London derby. Do you think overall, all the big games that you see across the season?
Yeah.
I think that Arsenal-Tottenham is the most guaranteed for being a spectacle.
Yeah, I think it's the best London derby for sure. And,
yes.
and when I think back to other big games that you get worked up for, to be fair, we have had a good one this, with Liverpool United. But throughout, I'd say the past sort of 5, 6, 7 years, some of those big games have always disappointed. But wherever Arsenal and Spurs have been,
they go for it.
They always go for it.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Iconic moments throughout. You think of Aaron Ramsey's goal, Thomas Rosicki's goal, Thierry Henry running the length of the pitch, the Lamella Rabona. Yes. Remember that was amazing. David Bentley, Aaron Lennon.
Was that during COVID?
It was, I think.
Yeah, I remember because
it's amazing. It was like a snooker shot. He kind of stunned the ball into the bottom corner.
Ronnie O'Sullivan-esque.
Yeah, it was sensational. I remember Adebayor scoring an outrageous goal. Harry Kane from the corner. Like, you can constantly remember these moments, these iconic, often goals that define a North London derby. And I think what's really interesting about the one that we saw last night is it's the first one that I can remember that won't really go down as... So Leandro Trossard scored the winner. It won't go down as a Trossard game. No. It won't be remembered for that. I feel like it will go down as the Lewis Skelly game. I think it will be the moment where we go, that's the day that Miles Lewis Skelly, the Islington boy, born and bred, playing for Arsenal against Tottenham, clearly hates Tottenham. I think that was the day that Lewis Skelly announced himself as a genuine top-class first-team player for Arsenal.
What impressed you the most about the performance? Yeah,
attitude.
That bit of needle.
Attitude, absolutely. Like, nobody won the ball back more for Arsenal than Arsenal. In fact, nobody won the ball back more on the pitch than Lewis Skelly. Like, that's the contribution, that's the amount of tackles that he was putting in, and it didn't matter who it was. So, I saw him at one point launch Brendan Johnson. And you're like, okay, that sort of makes sense to me. But he did the same to Kulusevski. Like, he didn't care. He didn't care whether it was Kulusevski. I think it's fair to say that Kulusevski is probably the best player in the Tottenham team. Certainly not necessarily for heritage. That would be Heung-min Son. But in terms of, like, performances today, it's Kulusevski, and he launched him.
With Lewis Skelly, what a time, by the way, to really seriously announce yourself as a top-class left-back in a massive moment when England are bereft of left-backs.
In front of Thomas Tuchel watching as well. Thomas Tuchel in the stands. And do you know what's amazing about him, by the way? This is something that I just found out today when I sort of looked into him a bit. Up until now, like, this is the first season that he's become an Arsenal first-teamer. But it's also the first season that he's become a left-back. Like, all of his Arsenal career. So he's been at Arsenal since he was 8. Right, coming through Hale End. Midfielder. So not only is he a top-class left-back, but I think it's fair to assume that if I asked you now with that knowledge to go, what are his skills, name his skill sets, I think you'd add versatility to it.
Well, I was going to say, it reminds me of shades of Bukayo Saka, who, when he first, to use Micah Richards' cliche, burst onto the scene, we all thought that he was like a wing-back. Yeah. And he's become one of the most prolific sort of wingers in the Premier League.
Yeah, do you know what? Being that kind of player, I think it's a great way to actually demonstrate the brilliance of certain footballers. The way that you can make, if people have the conversation around, is Bukayo Saka world class? I don't really think it's a conversation. I just think he is. But if you don't, that's fine. But the way that I could argue that he is, I was on a train to Gelsenkirchen for the England-Slovakia game. We've got a train all the way there. It's great. And when we were sort of debating how England can proceed in Euro 2024, what do we need to do? There was an amazing epiphany that I sort of had on that journey where I realised that England's best right winger was also England's best left back. Like, if that doesn't demonstrate world-class qualities, like the same fellow, like, I've never known that in football. Like, however good you think Mohamed Salah is, and I think he is undoubtedly an elite footballer and probably deserving of a Ballon d'Or, you'd never say he'd be the best left-back in a team. No. Whereas Bukayo Saka is, and it sounds like Lewis Skelly might have that quality to his game.
You're absolutely right. It's incredibly exciting for England fans and, of course, for Arsenal fans. Now, Arsenal managed to do the business without a recognised striker in the squad, without Bukayo Saka. What do you make of Arsenal's title hopes now? They're 4 points off. Obviously, Liverpool have got that game in hand against Everton coming up. It feels a little bit to me, as a neutral, that the sort of this is our season narrative from Arsenal is a massive roller coaster because, and I'm not talking about all Arsenal fans, but what I often see on the internet are the extremes.
Of course,
and we saw the disgraceful treatment towards Kai Havertz and his wife after his recent performances. Yet all of a sudden, the back pages today and what you're seeing on social media is, this is our season. We're back. We're breathing down Liverpool's necks. As level-headed as you can be about this,
yeah.
Where do you put their chances?
As level-headed as I can be, and this is a straw poll of one, in my opinion, I don't think they can win the league. I just don't think they can do it. Things can change. They could sign, if in the same week they end up beating Tottenham in the way that they did, it was a battering. I know it was only 2-1, but it was a battering. If in the same week they beat Tottenham and sign a world-class centre-forward, things change. Momentum changes. As things stand, when you look at their front line, Trossard, Havertz, it just doesn't inspire me. Raheem Sterling, Gabriel Martinelli, it doesn't inspire me. No. And I don't think that forward line will take you and guide you to a league title. But they are in touching distance. And I don't agree with this theory, but what do you think to this theory? If you look at the fixture list, Liverpool have a very unkind fixture list coming towards the end of the season. If you look at the last month, 6 weeks of the season, Liverpool's fixtures are tricky. Bearing in mind as well, they probably will have a semi-final of an FA Cup to play and potentially, probably in fact, a semi-final of a European Cup to play. Yeah. If Arsenal are 4 points, 6 points in touching distance going into the final 8 games of the season, there's a world in which I could potentially see it happening. Yeah,
I don't disagree. Crazier things have happened in football. I particularly think that as we see the contract issues at Liverpool sort of play out further down the line, that could become even more of a problem, injuries, etc. I think if there were this, like you say, if it was 8 games to go, then I would be more confident that Arsenal could do it. But there's a long way to go. Yeah. And Arsenal still seem adamant to not have a striker when everybody is crying out for a striker. The murmurs coming out the club are around Martin Zubimendi, another creative midfielder who Arsenal have had all of my lifetime. Have had these tippy-tappy players. It's not what they need, in my opinion. It is a striker. But we've got to think about their title chances. And after the game, Alex Crook spoke to Mikel Arteta, who obviously was delighted that they were back to winning ways after a couple of, let's be honest, pretty poor performances. A very happy Mikel Arteta there. Interesting, I think he was right to say that Arsenal were totally dominant last night, but I've noticed that Arteta has been saying that for the past 3 games, where it's not been the case. Obviously, big relief for him, but to pick up where we left off, squad depth is the issue. That's going to be their biggest hurdle, right, Rory?
It's squad depth, but it's also who they're up against. Like, this theory that just doesn't make any sense to me. The reason why Arsenal can't win the league, it's like the reason Arsenal didn't win the league last year, in my opinion. Arsenal were basically brilliant, but Manchester City were just sublime. Yeah. If you accrue 89 points,
you don't think that's the case this season?
No, I do. I think the reason why I don't believe Arsenal can do it, Arsenal will be able to, similar to what they did last year, they will be able to accrue a significant points tally. I just don't believe that it will be a points tally that can eclipse what Liverpool will achieve, and therefore they won't win the league. It's not that Arteta isn't doing a good job. He is. It's not that the Arsenal players aren't doing a good job. They are. It's just that there is somebody doing it better than them. I think that Arsenal are capable of achieving more than 80 points this season, which is a huge return. In former, when I was a kid, that wins you the league. It doesn't anymore. Football's changed. You now need to be aiming for 90. And weirdly, because of the brilliance of Klopp and Guardiola, really, 90 when I was young made you a great. 90 now doesn't make you even champions.
To paraphrase Mourinho, it's almost like they are becoming specialists in being second best, isn't it? Now, before we need to talk about Spurs before the break, but just quickly, you'll have seen the T-shirts in honour of Gabriel Jesus. Our very own Jason Cundy last night said that it was cringeworthy, bit of a calamity. Yeah. Just quickly, what do you make of that? Honouring your teammate who's ruptured his ACL, or do you think it's a bit too much?
I didn't necessarily think they all needed to wear the tie. I think what you could do is score a goal and go and get the shirt and pay homage to it that way and acknowledge. I think Gabriel Jesus obviously deserves to be acknowledged. Yeah, I feel like that tribute was the kind of tribute that you would potentially do if somebody was
and sadly passed
away. Yeah, it was that kind of tribute. It wasn't, Gabriel Jesus has a significant injury,
but he's okay.
He's okay. Yeah. So I thought it was slightly extreme. But do you know what? As judgmental as football fans can be, and to be totally frank, as I can be, it's got nothing to do with me, really.
I think that's very measured from you, Rory. When I was thinking about this, I thought, when I initially saw it, I did think, come on, that's a bit too much. But equally, if it was one of my players, if Yates here ruptured his knee and they all come out with Yates 22, I'd be loving that.
It's got nothing to do. Also, like, there's friendships. The way that Kai Havertz decides to acknowledge some bad news for one of his teammates, isn't like what we do.
Yeah.
We present our opinion and we comment on the football that we see. I don't necessarily think that I can have too strong a feeling on this. It's not what I would do. It's not necessarily what I thought would be the natural way to acknowledge the situation, but not really my business.
We've got to move on to Spurs. Some shocking stats.
Oh, God.
Only the bottom three have lost more games than Tottenham Hotspur. Ipswich have lost less than them. And they, from the last available 27 points, have only got 5. Talk to me, Rory. Is Ange Postecoglou a dead man walking?
Well, can you shed some light on this? Because I think everybody knows where I sit on Tottenham. Everybody knows where I sit on Postecoglou.
Okay,
I called it a long time ago. Can you help me understand this? Because you don't really, you're a Nottingham Forest fan. As a Chelsea fan, I'm naturally going to have a bias towards Tottenham, and I think that people will perceive my opinion on it to be biased. Help me understand this, Max. Why on earth isn't there a bigger furore around Postecoglou keeping his job despite this woeful form?
Well, the only saving graces for Postecoglou are that you can look at the injuries and use that as a scapegoat. I'm not using that as an excuse, but he will, and lots of Spurs fans understandably will. Romero, Van der Ven are out. I think another saving grace is you've got the likes of Jed Spence and Archie Gray covering themselves in glory despite the disarray and chaos around them, and the fact that they are 1-0 up in a Carabao Cup semi-final against Liverpool and they're still in the Europa League. However, what I would say about Ange Postecoglou is, and I know we will go back to this all the time, why can't he just show a little bit of movability, for want of a better term? You look back at particularly like Mourinho, Conte, none of the managers, although they were of a very different philosophical ilk to Ange Postecoglou, what do they all share in common? They do one thing and one thing only. They got one way or the highway. Ange Postecoglou, if he wants to save his job, needs to change things around, needs to sit deeper. And the thing I would just say that frustrates me about Postecoglou, Rory, is he came in with so much charm. He came in, it was refreshing, it was authentic. But, they say, don't you, you can tell if an orange is ripe or not when you squeeze it and the juice comes out. And I'm just beginning to see a little bit of needle.
No, he's moody.
Sam face. It's a little bit of needle with journalists.
No, this reputation that he's managed to cultivate is completely unjust. He isn't a particularly nice bloke. He doesn't come across as refreshing anymore. He's actually quite bitter and quite rude in interviews, and I don't know why people won't acknowledge that. This taps into, Max, the point that I'm making. Considering the circumstances, I think that it's actually remarkable that he isn't under way more pressure to be sacked.
They're 13th in the Premier League.
They're 13th in the Premier League, and they've lost more games than they've won. And for some reason, there isn't huge amounts of noise around him losing his job. There isn't really the talking point of the day, and it makes absolutely no sense to me. Do you know the other thing that I think is stark? I think football fans we can be very reactionary, but we can also be very patient. The one thing that I feel like football fans are never patient about is, how do you get on against your rivals? How does it go? And like Chelsea fans could basically put up with anything until Tottenham beat us under Antonio Conte that season. Everyone went, hang on a minute. Dele Alli scoring at Stamford Bridge, unacceptable. What I don't understand with Postecoglou is the 3 games that really matter if you're a Tottenham fan: Arsenal, Chelsea, West Ham. His record in those games. So he's played Chelsea 3 times. Postecoglou's played Chelsea 3 times. He's lost 3 times. He's played Arsenal 4 times. He's lost 3 and drawn 1. He's played West Ham 4 times. He's not won on 3 occasions of the 4. Like, he's never beaten Arsenal. He's never beaten Chelsea. He's beaten West Ham once. How isn't that being discussed more?
Look, it is not looking good for Ange Postecoglou, and I'll just finish with this. You'll remember last season, Tottenham fans were fuming with him when he turned around and said, this is just another game, the North London derby. And I would say last night's performance was bereft of passion and bereft of the determination you want to see from your side in a derby, and he is responsible for setting that standard. But look, enough said about Ange Postecoglou.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.